Oh, thank you very much. And thank you, organizers, for a flattering invitation here to address everyone. It's been very nice in the last few hours walking around. So many people nicely have come up to me and complimented us on the work that we do in conservation here in Chile and in Argentina. It's gratifying to get a little good feedback, because sometimes the road out there is tough going. But in any event, to get things rolling here, I'd like to try to put in context quickly the reality that we're living today. If we can think a little bit about the eco-social crisis that is the world that we live in, and that to get a sort of a large view of this, so that you can sort of back away a bit and think of things in the context of your life and the profession and the work that you do, what you get up to do every day. Oftentimes we have our heads down and we really don't see the forest for the trees. And I have a sort of little metaphor that I've been using recently, and that is to say, the eco-social crisis that we're immersed in at the moment is the worst environmental crisis in the last 65 million years. So I say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, we're in what we're calling now the 6th mass extinction event. The 5th mass extinction event was about 65 million years ago. And now biologists, geologists are telling us we're in the midst of the 6th massive extinction event. It's not a wonder that my wife Chris and I work in biodiversity conservation as our first and foremost effort, because the mother of all crises is the extinction crisis. If you extend the extinction crisis out, you can think that we're going to be living in a world with a few cockroaches on a sand dune and maybe a Norwegian rat, if you play it out. This is a very bleak future spelled out in front of us. But this 65 million years worst environmental crisis also coupled with the fact that in the meantime, we've ruined the climate. And we've ruined the climate in the last 500 years, really, if you'll take from the age of the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, then comes the Industrial Revolution. Now we're moving out into the informational revolution. And what's happened? We've created this worst crisis in 65 million years. That's something they have to ponder upon deeply, because that's where we are. And my response to this is, I think we need to take a real close look at the development model that's led us in a few 500 years to make the worst crisis in 65 million years. And I put the blame on the techno-industrial culture that we live in. Technology optimism, that new technologies will come on and will fix everything, hasn't been working. That little cell phone that probably all of you have, it's worth taking that thing every day and looking at it for 10 seconds for a month. That's only 300 seconds. That's 5 minutes. And ponder at what it took to get that little apparatus in your hand. I have a little thing that's going to click to change the slides here in a minute, which is roughly the same kind of technological gizmo as the cell phone. And if I look at that and stare at it and I think about all the things that it took to get this thing in my hand, we have the entire enchilada of techno-industrial society, and that's what's ruining the world. That's what's creating the biodiversity crisis in itself. So the development model, I think, has been a failure. It's been enormously successful in creating this massive environmental crisis, but it's been a failure to give us a future. That's something that we can say our grandchildren, great-grandchildren will have a healthy, vigorous planet Earth on which to live out their lives. So starting out with that, that's the son of the sobering side of things, as I see it, in the large substantive context in which we live. Coming back down to the present, and of course everybody says immediately, what can you do about this? And I'm saying, let's first understand the depth of the crisis and the deconstructing of this crisis to find out what are the root causes and make a systemic analysis so that we'll be able to make strategies that make sense. Because if we start out half-cocked and just say, we're going to do this or do that, we may very well be exacerbating the very crisis that we're entrapped. So coming back around now to the subject at hand, which is this summit, a other little idea I'd like to tell you is that today I had a sort of gestalt. I walked into the dining room there in Yanquiwe, and I looked down the longest table I've ever seen. In fact, there were like 4 or 5 of them in long rows. I've never seen anything like it. Maybe some of you have, but that was the first time. And I got out my camera and I took a picture of that because I want to show my wife that this was an amazing table. And what really this simply sums up is that, as Shane has said, there's some 700 delegates here, and this is an industry that is growing. And this is an industry that's replacing an old and tired model of travel and holiday taking. And I got the same feeling a few years ago when I went to the Biofach organic food fair in Germany, which is absolutely enormous. 3,000 exhibitors, 50,000 visitors. And I realized that the organic food movement, which is the food equivalent or counterpart to this in travel, had been growing enormously. And these movements that have been under the radar screen until recently are the future, and they are expanding exponentially, and they're unstoppable. Just as the environmental movement that started maybe 50 years ago, the modern environmental movement is unstoppable. So know and have confidence and tell your friends and tell your colleagues that you're in the vanguard, and this is an unstoppable movement in the tourist sector, just as the agriculture, organic agriculture or organic foods are in the vanguard of the food business. So that's the good news. That's the thing that gets us up in the morning and doesn't get us depressed and feeling that this crisis is rolling over us with no defense. Back down to tourism and conservation. As the title here says, we think this is a healthy and effective partnership at both conservation and tourism can help each other. And that really, we should think of conservation as a consequence of good tourism. Before I go further, let me introduce my wife, Chris. She's very much my partner in all the work that we do. She's one of the world's great conservationists, female conservationists. She's sorry not to be here. She sent her best to everyone. She was unfortunately committed, and she's up in the United States also giving talks at the moment. But we work together hand in hand. She's a great conservationist. Many of you know her. She's a ex-owner of the Patagonia clothing company, along with our old friends Melinda and Yvonne Chenard. She was the CEO there for many years. She's been involved in all the stuff that we're talking about and you two are involved in. A little bit of our own work. We work in 4 specific areas. Number one, as you see on the top there, is conservation. Biodiversity conservation is our biggest and most important program. We do restoration and reforestation work. We support activism primarily in the environmental and conservation area, and we're very interested in farming, in agriculture, organic agriculture, of course, and we actually, it's a little more than organic agriculture. It's what we call agroecology. And all of these things oriented for keeping the wild. We think that the wild world is essential. We've over-humanized and over-domesticated the planet. Shane mentioned that the volcano question. Volcanoes are neat. They're spectacular. Here's one that went off in one of our park projects, Pumaline Park, just south of here, in 2008, and it was really something to behold. In any case, what we're talking about here, when we're thinking about what we're doing, we try to impress in our work consistently that the health of nature comes first and foremost before anything, and that like sitting on that sand dune with a few cockroaches and the Norwegian rat, we won't have any economy, any society, civilization, no adventure tourism either, on a dead planet. And that has to sort of remain as the leitmotif of our thinking in everything that we do. We try to put that into the mix always. Here we have how can we get all of you guys that are in the adventure, eco, nature tourism. I'm not quite sure what the right word is. Probably you're using all three of those or even more terms to describe the industry and the businesses that you're in. But here we have a chance where we can get a lighter footprint with nature tourism and well thought through processes on the way, and keep that wild world that we have. Also, these are a few pictures from a rewilding project that we are doing in northeastern Argentina, of which there's tremendous tourist possibilities. We didn't realize it at first, and we just having people flocking, absolutely going wild themselves about the rewilding process. We're reintroducing species that were extirpated from the Iberá wetlands ecosystem in northeastern Argentina, in Corrientes, right up to the jaguar. It's the first jaguar reintroduction ever done, and we're just at the beginning of it, but we've got big success with giant anteaters, pompadours, peccaries, and other species. This, you can well imagine, we're wild about national parks. We think that every country in the world practically now has a national park system. Chile has an old national park system, old in the sense of the history of national parks. It's 85 years or more, maybe it's 86 or 87 by now. System of national parks. Argentina, where we work as well, is over 100 years. United States, of course, was the first about 150 years ago to start the first park, Yellowstone. But this is the gold standard of conservation, trying to get national and combinations, often of private land, into national parks. The other component that's important to us, and very important, I know, to you and to the travel industry, the nature travel industry or the venture travel industry, is combining tourism. And here, our program has been centered in Chile on the Carretera Austral as the central route down through the south of Chile that we hope, and we hope all the Chileans here and anybody can bear some influence onto government, is to make this road be not just the most spectacular road in terms of landscapes, but to have access to up to 20 national parks, 17 in Chile and 3 just across the border in Argentina, or 4 perhaps in Argentina. In any case, we've been publishing books, doing the research, working with people in government, and there's good enthusiasm about this. And I think what you're going to see for those working in Chile and also sending people to Chile for adventure travel is this will play out in the next few years, and to be the central access point to lots of parks and to truly extraordinary landscapes that we have here in Chile. I've been to 120 countries, quite a few. I've been to national parks. We have been interested in national parks all my life. I've been to hundreds and hundreds of national parks on 7 continents. Well, Antarctica is sort of a national park in itself. And the south of Chile is right up there, 5 stars. Will stand tall with any place in the world for beautiful landscapes. Oops. Venture tourism, here's a little bit. By the way, all these photos that you're seeing here are our projects in one form or another. Sometimes out hiking. I'm still getting out there sometimes, despite the heavy workload. Maybe you see there in the center, there's a climber there. That's me back a few years ago, and climbing in Scotland. But these are the kind of adventure activities that you're, of course, all familiar with. In terms of parkland work, the Pumalín Park is our first big project in South America. When I came here in 1990, got this started. Many of you probably know about Pumalín Park. Of course, we invite everybody to come visit us anytime you want. And it's a truly amazing landscape, about 300,000 hectares. We've learned a little something about promotion from the travel industry, and that is the use of travel posters, old-fashioned travel posters. They really work, and they're good. So we did a program in the province of Palena, which is just south of here, the next province south, where our Pumalín project is, promoting the province of parks. Before that, the citizens, not many of them, because it's a small province, really hadn't thought about their province as being the spectacularly beautiful province that it is, and having 3 really dramatic parks there. They take up over half of the province in itself. So we got that going. People now down our way pull their suspenders and say, we live in the province of parks. And of course, Pumalín, we'd like to promote its qualities and its beauty. We've taken on a big effort over the last some 20 years of building public access infrastructure, campgrounds, overlooks, visitor centers, park rangers, housing, signage, bridges, all the stuff that makes up national parks. So when you come down and visit, this is the kind of infrastructure that you're likely, that you will, in fact, see and make available to you. Also, of course, tourists sometimes are there buying local products. We're promoting local products, wool off of our sheep, honey from our bees, and arts and crafts, local handmade things, non-industrial. Promoting also the small home industries that you find in our part of the world there. This is a little bit one of the gateways to Pumalín, Caleta Gonzalo, where we have restaurants, tourist cabanas, the kind of stuff that you find in national parks all around the world. Pumalin, we are now presenting this to the government after years of working and getting the public access infrastructure in place. We want to turn this over to the Chilean government, sort of turnkey park, so to speak. So it's ready to go. Just next to the south end of Pumalin, we have a social program going there of beautifying this small village that sits next to Pumalin, and we've been subsidizing the makeovers of houses, doing landscaping, signage, town parks and so forth. And we call it the center of the world. That's the slogan. And that's breathed new life into this small village so that there now can be a good synergy between parks and visitors. People are opening up small bed and breakfasts, little shops, and restaurants. So that's part of the development of a new economic activity in this part of the world, which was based more on grazing in inappropriate landscapes and forestry, and of course some fishing in the ocean. So this is the new El Amarillo. We know that people come from all over the world, and they enjoy having the villages and towns also looking nice, that are harmonizing with the landscapes around there. So this is a nice combination of a social and environmental project all in one. Now we'll jump down to the Patagonia Park. This is really my wife Chris's. She leads this project. It too is slated to be donated to the national government to join the chain of national parks in Chile. It goes up against the border with Argentina in the Aysén region. Some of you I know have been there. I talked to a lot of people today that are from Aysén. And of course, they're working on the promoting of adventure tourism in Aysén. This is a little bit to give you a little bit of an idea of the architecture there, local stone, copper roofs. Copper, of course, Chile and copper go right together. And the idea is to make strong public architecture that recalls and honors and celebrates the great epic of national parks building that went on some 40 and 50 years ago, and to a great extent has dropped off. We'd like to reinvigorate that idea so that the parks architecture and public access infrastructure is at the same stature as the landscapes themselves and the biodiversity that you find there. This is a little bit of the types of interiors of lodges and restaurants and campgrounds and employee housing, visitor centers, and so forth that make up the administrative center of this park. What we have here in the Patagonia Park is the vision for a transboundary park that will combine the newly created, and we'll come to it in a bit, Patagonia National Park, Argentina. And the idea is to put these two parks, the Chilean side and the Argentine park, together to make a transboundary or binational park, similar to what you find in Africa or similar to what you find in the United States and Mexico or the United States and Canada and so forth. It's a perfect candidate for this. They share the same name. And of course, Patagonia, as we all know, is a registered trademark, a brand name, if you will. So this is going to be a very dramatic combination as it unfolds in the next few years. And we're forecasting around 200,000 visitors a year within 8 or 10 years. So we tell our friends and colleagues and associates in ISEN, get ready, because there are going to be a lot of people coming. Already the Argentines, who are very fast on their feet in tourism, are gearing up for their side of the border. So that's the Chilean side. Here on the Argentine side, we got a couple of cute foxes there, and it's got lots of biodiversity. Same on the Chilean side. All the creatures that belong in this ecosystem is practically the only place in all of Patagonia where you're going to find the ecosystem intact with all the creatures that belong there are still there and present. The Huemul deer, which many of you Chileans know, it's a symbol on the national shield, is hanging on the edge of extinction, and we've been putting in very special efforts. We have a whole team working on making sure that deer does not go extinct. But anyway, this just give you a quick little glimpse of the kind of things that people will be able to see there and can see there rather easily. Again, retail shops, local crafts, artisan products, and good rustic luxury, if you will. Everything handmade. All the wood is recycled wood in our interiors. Hand-knitted bedspreads and so forth make for a kind of atmosphere that is appropriate for these kinds of places. Here I've mixed in a little bit Pumalin, Patagonia Park, and the Ibarra that I mentioned before is the wetlands in northeast Argentina, where we also have tourist facilities. We're not really in the tourist business, but we are in the tourist business because the infrastructure for public access requires to have some of these things within the parks. But the real effort is to get, stimulate the development of tourist services, hotels and so forth, guides and shops and restaurants in the villages that are outside the park but close to the park, so that there's a rural development program simultaneously with the parkland development. Now we'll jump up to the wetlands in northeast Argentina, in Ibarra. Here's where you're going to find the fauna most intensive of all Argentina, and it's a virtual, enormous outdoor zoo, in effect. And we have 400 species of birds. I don't even know how many species of reptiles and fish and so forth, but we're talking about hundreds and hundreds. It's very intense, subtropical, and of course, brings with it its own beauty. Lots and lots of animals, easy to see. Because it's in savannas and grasslands, very good for bird watching. People are coming from all over the world just for the bird watching, because somebody from England can, the first day, will have 50 new birds on their life list, because these birds are easy to see. We've worked on the development. We're pretty good these days, I have to say, about designing campgrounds. A little bit of that comes, of course, because I'm a camper myself, so we have some ideas what campers like, but we've been developing campgrounds, donating the campgrounds to municipalities, and building the kind of infrastructure for receiving a good flow of tourists. And we have pretty girls stand there and welcome everybody on the tank. No, she's one of our team members just out there. But this has been going very well. It's an area that we hope to see a national park here in the next few years. about 1,300,000 hectares. That's somewhere around 4 million acres. It's known as the Punt Canal of Argentina. But very beautiful place, and very dynamic. Here's a little bit more of the kind of infrastructure for campgrounds and visitor facilities. We also there, just like here with the Carretera Austral, developed a scenic highway, which is the route that circles this great wetlands. The blue is not open water. These are floating islands, wetlands, marshes, and so forth. Give you a little bit of an idea of what's there. Oops, jumped too fast. Of course, we're doing promotions to promote visiting to the wetlands. We have a project going there called Corrientes Vuelve a Ser Corrientes, which means Corrientes goes back to being Corrientes. That's with the reintroduction of these animals that were extirpated there, and also to reinvigorate cultural traditions and folklore. So we do all kinds of promotions to get people interested in the wetlands and the creatures that live there, and to feel proud of them for local people, so that these areas will be protected, and that there will be political leadership will also take steps and measures so that there's good protection for these lands. Here's a little bit for you to see the kind of campaigns that we've been doing. These are posters of posters. We have many posters. We take these posters and they're circulated all around. They're in big demand. Everybody wants to have their picture taken with posters. And it's been a rousing success, and it's bringing more and more tourists that are interested in nature tourism into the wetlands area. It's just been an exponential increase in visitors in the last few years, and brought prosperity to these localities that have been quite economically depressed until then. Here we have what we call gaucho tourism, for lack of a better word, colorful cowboys of that part of the world, as well as folklore fitting into this. These are from the villages that surround the wetlands here, rich in folklore tradition, great dancers and great music. Interesting also for tourists. Again, here we have young people. These are just, they look like models, but this is a photograph I took myself on the left side here of this young couple. And this has been a reinvigoration and a reenchantment of rural life. A small village of about 1,500 people. Every kid in that village, that's from about 13 to 18, knows all the traditional dances. They're all delighted in traditional dress, and this is what they look like. This is typical of what's happening. This has been a sort of a reinvigoration of folk tradition and a reappreciation of how nice, wonderful, fun, and happy one can be living in these rural places and proud of where you live. We have this rewilding program that I mentioned before. There's our first jaguar, female. She's getting a boyfriend fairly shortly, and we're hoping that they're going to get along well, and that we'll start seeing some offspring. Peccaries, pompadours being reintroduced, anteaters, maned wolves, and again, lots of interest on the part of both locals and visitors to see what this rewilding project is about, and it's a terrific program for getting people sensitized to what's happening within ecosystems and the need to restore them. Among other activities there, of course, is getting out in the marshes. The traditional canoes with these long poles are sort of the the Northeast Argentine equivalent of Venice in the gondolas. And of course there's fishing, canoeing, kayaking, and bird watching, animal watching, mostly through the extensive networks of canals and some lakes within the wetlands. So that's what we're doing up in Northeast Argentina. Just to recap a few other projects that we've done already that are sort of in the bag, if you will. The creation of Corcovado National Park. We did, of course, we do all these things in conjunction with national governments because nations make national parks, not private NGOs. We can stimulate and catalyze the formation of national parks. That's our role, that's what we do. It's very gratifying, of course, when the nation says, yes, let's do this, let's make a national park. Here's the Corcovado National Park, absolute beauty, a gem in the Chilean park system, 300,000 hectares, just south of here, about 200 kilometers, and a real beauty. Stand up with any park in the world is a spectacular, spectacular landscape. Right offshore in the Gulf of Ancud, just last year in the Patagonia government, a marine protected area, marine park was created, the Corcovado Marine Park. Also beautiful with incredible marine diversity. Chris, my wife's foundation, Conservación Patagonica, created the Monte Leon National Park about 10 years ago on the South Atlantic Patagonian coast. This is a beautiful coastal park, the first coastal park in Argentina. Excuse me. There is public access infrastructure that was built by the Argentine Park Administration. Quite a nice job that they did too. So this is also a good park to be thinking about if you're operating in tourism down in the areas of Perito Moreno in the Glaciares Park, and Santa Cruz makes a good stop on that kind of circuit there. At the end of the Piñera administration and the beginning of this new Bachelet administration, Chile declared the M de Gaia on Terra del Fuego an extraordinarily beautiful park that sits up against the Argentine border near, along the Argentine border with the Terra del Fuego National Park in Argentina side by side with the M de Gaia National Park. Very, very beautiful park there. Going back up to central north Argentina, last year, we managed to push through the labyrinths of Argentine Congress, Senate, and provincial governments, the declaring of the Il Impenetrable National Park in the Chaco, replete with tremendous amount of biodiversity there. A very, very biodiverse, intense, new national park. So last year was very good in that sense, since we how should I say, achieved our objectives of making new national parks. Another thing that we've been doing is we've been encouraging governments, and I will shamelessly exhort all of you to put pressure wherever you can put pressure on governments to promote their national parks, because national parks are, first of all, the best expression of social equity that there is, and that it's the best place for the country itself. So we are working on, these are some campaigns that we've designed to see if we can get the governments that through their tourism agencies or their tourism ministries to really put the national governments out around the world to create destinies for tourists. It's just a quick review of the different projects that we have around South America and in Southern Cone, Argentina, and Chile, and gives you an idea that we're kind of spread across the map. So that's it. That's the work we're doing. We're continuing pushing on that. We hope to get more national parks in the future. And this is our way of paying our rent for living on the planet. Thank you.